Welcome back to Truth Hurts, where we expose corrupt politicians, lying corporate media. I'm Jake Duesenberg, your host, broadcasting live from Roseville, Minnesota, in the belly of the beast, the liberal zombie apocalypse of Minneapolis and St. Paul, a land where Governor Walz wants to confiscate firearms, put us in jail if we don't listen to him, make us into felons, fine us $25,000, and if we are in the government-approved category of ownership of AR-15, which means you bought it before January 1st, 2027, according to the law they're trying to pass, then you have to pay for certification, a license to hold that. You also are required to hold insurance on it, and you have to allow government inspectors into your house to ensure that you are storing it correctly according to whatever ridiculous mandate that they would even concoct. That is what they're trying to pass here in Minnesota, and that can't happen. That can't pass. This is a must not pass a whole slew of legislation. It's not one, it's many different ones. We're going to get into it. There's 15 different anti-gun measures. Tim Walz talked about. Our sponsor today is Alpine Cabinetry in the great city of St. Cloud, Minnesota. Also, we're brought to you by Elite Guardian, mn.com. If you go to Elite Guardian right now, and if you're looking to sign up for your next Minnesota permit to carry course, if you need to renew or you're new to it, we have many different options. We actually have a hybrid virtual option where you can do 2.5 hours of the curriculum at home. And then you will do 1.5 hours with in-person training and your qualification. Otherwise, I got a couple of 4-hour classes all up in Hugo, Minnesota at the Bald Eagle Sportsman Association. So go to EliteGuardianMN.com. You'll see right on the top, it'll say the Minnesota Permit to Carry course. Okay, joining me as I just, anytime I want to talk about guns, Gunner's like just dying to do it. I mean, Gunner's an attorney friend, but you don't specialize necessarily in gun work or gun legislation. It's just that it's a passion. It's a hobby of yours, right?
Did take in law school. I did write my long paper under Joseph Olson, who authored the carry legislation here in Minnesota. So wrote my long paper on the Second Amendment. So I'm an advocate.
Yeah, which is funny because you were sitting in my class for your most recent Minnesota permit to carry course, which you're required to do every 5 years, and here I am teaching you the law, right?
Right. Yep.
You're probably more versed than I am, although I'm pretty versed, right? I mean,
Indeed,
you
you
gotta
are.
have to, you know.
Yep.
And they're actually trying to go after the preemption law, so we're gonna get into that. We got so much. We got Tucker 91 saying hello to everyone. Laser Jim in the comment section. Razzle Dazzle. Let us know where you guys are watching from. Even if you're outside of Minnesota, I think this is important stuff because here's how I put it. Tim Walz might be the governor of Minnesota, but he represents a state that should matter to everyone because Minnesota is a red state. If you look at the maps, if you just travel throughout Minnesota, it's a red state. But there's a large metropolitan area, and the inner core of that is so solidly blue that it gives Democrats a chance, to represent a red state. And it should be a threat to Wisconsin, and it was a threat in Iowa, and it should be a threat in the future of Iowa. And it's a threat like this to a lot of these states that aren't like solid red western states or southern states, right? So it does matter to you guys, right? A lot of people in Minnesota that want to quickly get out of the state, they think Wisconsin's a path. And Wisconsin could turn into this state in a matter of many, maybe 10 years. And so it's very important for people to understand that Minnesota changing the demographics and the change in policy and politicians is very important to the rest of the country. And hopefully we can talk a little bit more about that. So in Minnesota, the one thing that Democrats don't do well at usually is they don't do well at gun politics because there is a strong Second Amendment community in the state. Let's go to Governor Walz's proposal. So this is a tweet, and this is how big of a package he's doing. There's 15 different items, includes banning what he calls military assault rifles and high capacity magazines. I'm gonna read the legislation. It's not rifles only. It's actually pistols and shotguns. He wants to repass the binary trigger ban. He wants to ban firearms without serial numbers. We'll talk a little bit about that. We've talked about that on the show on the case Walker Anderson. Require reporting of lost or stolen firearms. Require safe storage of firearms, which, who's against safe storage, but what is the government trying to do here? You guys probably are aware of that. Require firearm insurance, which you're not required to buy insurance right now on a firearm. Implement gun industry accountability, repeal local preemption of firearm restrictions, support for additional public awareness of extreme risk protection orders, implement firearm and ammunition tax, allow public colleges and universities to restrict firearms on campuses for visitors, increase mental health support, establish a school support intervention and resource team, establish a school safety center resources and school safety grant program, and expand behavior threat assessment and management staffing. And of course, the last few are don't seem to be as much about guns as the previous few. So Governor Walz went and did a press conference the other day. And as you guys probably know how these things work, he brings a bunch of community members and to tell their story. And of course, with the Annunciation school shooting, he leaned heavily on that tragedy to try to take your guns away. And so you're going to see that here. You're going to see a bunch of people from the community, people representing anti-gun groups, and a student trying to promote these ideas of taking away gun laws. And I just got to say, the thing that really upsets me, Gunner, is that, you know, everyone would do anything they can to stop a gun tragedy at a school, right? The problem is the left always goes to our guns. The guns that we own aren't going to change anything. It's not going to stop a tragedy at a school. In fact, what it's going to do is it's going to break up my family because I won't give up my guns, and you're going to turn me into a felon. You're going to put me in prison and break up my family. So their solutions are not solutions, right? We want law-abiding citizens to own guns. We want law-abiding citizens to be trained. So they're ignoring actually a path of solving these things. And I think we'll answer that because there's a real big hypocrisy, and we're going to cover this up front, that Tim Walz uncovered in this video. And I don't even know if you've seen this, Gunner, but if you haven't, it's going to be interesting. Did you watch my video from yesterday, by the way?
I did. Yeah, it was great.
You did see it. I gave a little preview of it. All right, so let's just start right here. This is the press conference with Tim Walz. And Gwen, his wife Gwen over here, I mean, her demeanor is so interesting in this whole thing. Just watch her.
Everyone, and thank you for being here. I'd like to do note we have 2 empty desks sitting out there for Fletcher and Harper. We have others sitting outside. If you needed a graphic reminder of what gun violence does and ripping us apart, that is a pretty moving tribute.
See, I don't like them stealing the moral argument here. There isn't a single person out there that I know makes the case for school shootings being a good thing. We're all hurt by it, especially, Gunner and me. We both have children that are in grade school. So I hate how they try to steal away that moral argument with things that aren't solutions, which, as you can tell, it's going to be to actually take away our Second Amendment rights. All right, let's continue on.
It's also a call to action, and I'm going to thank all of the folks who are here with our legislative leaders who have worked on this for years. We have groups here that are supporting us. I'd like to call out Violence Free Minnesota, Moms Demand Action, Protect Minnesota, Students Demand Action, Annunciation Light Coalition, Giffords, and so many others. And then you're going to be hearing from Bianca and Tommy, but you're also going to be hearing from Lydia. And I'd just like to note, I oftentimes say this in times of tragedy, where the courage of people come from who are in the midst of tragedy and their own struggles, take that and channel it into action. And that's exactly what we're doing here today. We gavelled it.
Okay, and I'm not going to just play this all out because you can imagine it's just a bunch of gobbledygook, but I want you to understand that Tim Walz from the onset is going to tell you he's not going against our Second Amendment protected rights. Let's listen to him in his own words.
We know the data shows our red flag laws are saving lives. We know that these are concrete proposals that make a difference. We've proven to the rest of the world that Minnesota is built differently. And I want to make this case that this legislative session, this is an opportunity to make Minnesota the safest state around gun violence while doing nothing to impinge on your Second Amendment rights. So I would encourage the legislative.
Now watch Gwen's face. Watch Gwen's face when he says this, because it's obviously bullshit, right? Second Amendment says that you can't infringe on a right to keep and bear arms. Keep and bear arms. And yet that's like your signature piece of legislation is stopping us from keeping and bearing arms. Just watch Gwen's face here when he says this.
On your doing nothing to impinge on your Second Amendment rights.
Wait, what?
So
what the hell? God, we know this guy's a liar, but like seriously, his wife doesn't believe him there.
Right. The side eye. Look, and I mean, when your first, method of this first proposal is to take AR-15s and ban magazines that are ubiquitous. They're all over the place, and they're used for lawful purposes every single day. It's a rarity. It's like 0.03% every day that an AR-15 is used for a violent, illegal purpose.
Right. Yes. And inanimate object is not the problem here. And I think I'm going to make this case here real soon because actually, I'm not going to make the case. We're going to let Tim Walz himself make the case. So let me scoot ahead. Just want to preface this whole thing with Tim Walz wants to slam the gun industry for being here. And as I go into this legislation, you guys are going to see that the gun industry their livelihood is being threatened. So of course they're going to show up to the Capitol and advocate for their way of life. But just watch this. This is so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I think it's in. We work together with them. Yeah, I think so. And clarification. So you hear the energy here and the passion. And I do think that's an important point that the representative brought up, that you're going to hear the same old things. It's going to be this mental health crisis. And are there really?
Okay, do you hear what he's saying? He's dismissing, Gunner, that there's a mental health crisis, right? Oh, they're just going to say the same old thing. I'll play it back. The same old thing from the pro-gun people. It's a mental health crisis. That's what he says.
Are there really gun industry people here? Well, maybe it's
here's his acting.
I thought if that seems crazy to me at this point. That's not the discussion we're having. We're talking about safety and things here, and having gun industry folks. Good luck to them today.
Well, of course they're going to be there, right?
Indeed, but I also think it's mildly offensive to say that it's the gun lobby that he's fighting, when in fact it's all of these grassroots folks that are law-abiding, that are protecting their property, their life, their well-being. And this is ridiculous to say that it's the gun lobby, when in fact it's everyday Americans.
It 100% is everyday Americans, and it's that combination of the two, right? Because obviously the gun industry wouldn't exist unless us everyday Americans were buying their products, and buying those products in a safe and legal way, right? No one's being harmed when you and I buy a firearm. It's just an utterly ridiculous thing to say. So, and by the way, it's also protected by the Second Amendment. It says that the government cannot infringe on the right to keep and bear arms. Okay. So, as you heard Tim Walz here, it's clearly not a mental health issue, right? The gun industry is just going to tell you the same old thing. It's a mental health issue. But according to Tim Walz, it's about the guns, right? That's what you get from what he's saying, right?
Under that logic, it's normal people then that go and shoot up schools and commit mass murder. Like, it's normal people that do that. That's obviously not correct.
Okay. This is where I think this needs all the attention in the world. Governor Walz said the most shocking thing, and once again, the reason I was critiquing Gwen is because I think Gwen gets very uncomfortable here when he makes a submission. But Tim Walz did come from rural Nebraska. That's where he grew up, and we all know what it was like growing up in the 1970s at school, where people did bring their shotguns, usually put them in their trucks. But according to Tim Walz, he put it in his locker. Listen to him in his own words.
I used to tell the story about taking my gun to high school, which I did. Throw it in the locker. I'd go after football practice. Well, that's not today's world by any stretch of the imagination. And
what changed? Did the gun change?
That kids have their guns at school is ludicrous. So
okay, I'm just gonna do a replay on this thing, and I mean, look at the posture change of Gwen here, like, and she actually took the mic just before this. I don't know if I'll get into that, but what. I think she's getting a little frustrated and nervous that he says this and admits it, because the whole argument by the left just deteriorates here. We've been told mental health isn't the issue, but and it's all guns, but in 1970, and he even admits the same gun wouldn't, he's not advocating for bringing it to school. Listen to him in his own words.
It's okay to say, you know what, this is not the 1970s. I used to tell the story about taking my gun to high school, which I did, and you'd throw it in your locker and go after football practice.
She's so nervous.
That's not today's world by any stretch of the imagination. And to try and hang out and make an argument that you should have kids have their guns at school is ludicrous. So I'll appeal to him.
So why is it ludicrous, Walz? What has changed since those glory days in the 1970s where you admit you brought a gun to school? What has changed? Gunnar, do you have any possible theory what could have changed in those decades?
Well, there's a lot of things that have changed, and it is unfortunate, but it is a loosening of morals and a downfall of society largely. And when we see the influx and the ebbs and flows of these mass shooters, we see this as a more recent phenomenon, unfortunately. And so, what has changed? I mean, there's a lot of things that's changed. We could blame Hollywood, the media, music industry. But it does seem like there is something in common with folks that decide to pick up a gun and shoot up a bunch of innocent people. And it's obviously mental health related because, like I said, it's not normal people that's doing this. And I don't want to stigmatize mental health, but I also want to recognize that it's real, that these conditions can impact folks in a way that is detrimental to society. So I think if you look at this discussion of SSRIs, I think that there's a large number of folks that have engaged in school mass shootings that are on SSRIs. And then if you look at more recently, unfortunately, if you look at the last 5 years, every single mass shooter in North America, mass shooting defined as 4 or more killed, mass shooters in a school in the last 5 years, there's been 3. Okay, so they're all trans people. This is nothing against individual trans people. This is a criticism of the trans industry. But if you look at the amount of people in the United States that are trans, it's like 0.2%, maybe, if that. How can 0.2% of the people comprise 100% of the school mass shootings in the last 5 years? That's unfortunate, and it's an issue that we need to address.
Well, it does seem to be like a large faction of the most recent ones, no doubt about it, because even the one up in Canada,
Right.
and they were trying to disguise that was clearly a trans person. So was Annunciation. Everyone knows the one in Kentucky or Tennessee?
Right. And
Yeah,
that was
sorry,
actually
Nashville.
that did that. So it was a female that did that. So
Yeah.
it's like it's across the board in terms of trans, but it's unfortunate. Again, this is a criticism of the trans industry, not individual trans people.
Well, and not just to make it about trans, but obviously that's a mental health issue. It's just here's the I asked AI to give me the data here of prescriptions for antidepressants, and you can see in the 1970s they're very rare. It's very low prescriptions, kind of new at the time, and then you can see a steady growth to today's population. And the most recent data, I don't know how to change my us being in the way here, but most recent data shows it's only adults 18 plus. We're at 13.8%. So you can imagine if you factor in teenagers, that number is over 15%. Who knows how high that gets. And obviously that's the difference, right? The difference is in the 1970s, there was a different culture, a culture that wasn't overprescribing SSRIs to children. It was a culture that was, not as many broken families. Those are the issues here, right? And Tim Walz doesn't want to try to talk about that, and he kind of shits on it.
Right.
And he literally just his signature legislation, and let's get into that. I mean, that's what it's all about. It's about the inanimate object, and then that object is something that's so important to us because and let's just be honest with the Second Amendment's about. It's about a tyrannical government. And so he's trying to take that ability to defend ourselves from a tyrannical government, but even anyone that wants to do harm to our families, he wants to take that away from us. And this is a signature piece of legislation. You saw it was the number one item that they put on there. It's House File 3433. Excuse me. in the House, and then the Senate file 3654 is a companion bill. It's authored by Representative Emma Greenman. She's in a safe district here in the metro area, so strong leftist. It's got all the usual suspects in the left-wing Democrat House, including the crazy person, we call him Chris Finke, but he masquerades as a woman as Lee Finke. So all the usual suspects got on this bill. The max authors of 34, and then it's got the max authors in the Senate. And this is what the bill does. It defines what assault rifle or semi-automatic military style assault weapons are, which is currently in definition in Minnesota law. And then it goes on to further define it. And just for people that don't know this, when you're tweaking current state laws, what you do is you cross out the thing you want to get rid of, and then you underline the additions. Okay, so that's what you see when you look at proposed bills. So they want to further define semi-automatic. Let me make sure I get the language right. They want to further define semi-automatic military-style assault weapon to include semi-automatic military-style assault weapon also includes any one semi-automatic rifle that has a capacity to accept a detachable magazine and has one or more of the following. Just so you guys know, my go-to hunting rifle has a detachable magazine. Right, it's a Tika rifle. Okay, so as long if it has any of these other things like a pistol grip, a feature capable of functioning as a protruding grip that can be held by a non-trigger hand, a folding or telescopic stock. Ooh, those very dangerous telescopic stocks. A shroud attached to the barrel or that partially completely encircles the barrel, a flash suppressor. If it has those things, now it's considered a semi-automatic military-style assault weapon. So hunting rifles will be included in this definition. They go further. They go semi-automatic pistols or any semi-automatic centerfire or rimfire rifle with a fixed magazine that has capacity to accept more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Okay, interesting. Then number 3, semi-automatic pistol that has the capacity to accept a detachable magazine and has one or more of the following, and it has a lot of the similar ones as the one above. And then they further go into semi-automatic shotgun that has one or more of the following: a pistol grip or thermal stock. I was just thinking about this after I cut my video yesterday. I think that's a pretty common thing with turkey hunting shotguns. I'm just trying to think here real quick. Turkey hunting shotguns, because mine doesn't, but I put pistol grip. Yeah, there you go.
Right.
And that would be a semi-automatic right there too, right? So this would be your typical. This is a Weatherby, turkey hunting shotgun would then be illegal. Here's a one on the Meat Eater show. I don't know what the brand is here, but I'm sure they make a ton of different ones. This one's sold in Bass Pro Shop. That's a pump action, obviously. But it looks like there's plenty of different options for this. And so that would be by definition because it's got the pistol grip. That's the way I read it. Is that the way you read it, Gunnar?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so that would be illegal. That would be a semi-automatic military-style weapon. Okay, so they expand the definition. And then what they do is they go, in subdivision 2, it is unlawful for a person to transfer, own, or possess semi-automatic military-style assault weapons. So all those things, it is unlawful for you to own that or possess it. And you just heard Tim Walz say this. I'm not going to impinge on your Second Amendment rights. Well, what is the Second Amendment? It says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Does it not? How can you square that with that? Clearly, you're telling a lie.
If you look at the legislation proposal here, and if you look at the language defining banned weapons, I mean, what percentage of actual weapons out there would that be? I mean, it seems like virtually all of the guns that I lost in that tragic boating accident last year would be covered under this. And I mean, I just don't think that's going to fly. I think in terms of you're banning a weapon like this, that's an illegal taking. So they'd have to reimburse you for that at minimum. And I mean, that alone would cost taxpayers, billions of dollars in Minnesota alone.
I don't even know what the amount would be, but it would be a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, right. But let's get into it. I think that's a great point. It does make exceptions for people that are in the armed forces or peace officers, in their duty, and then also people in the transfer of firearms, if that is still the business, but even then requires it can't be held for more than 120 days. So then here's the category, and this is what you're alluding to, is current owners, and then it says certification of ownership or semi-automatic military-style assault weapons of military-style weapons. A person who legally owned or possessed a semi-automatic military-style assault weapon before January 1st, 2027. Once again, the definition includes like commonly owned turkey hunting guns here. And who desires to keep ownership or possession of the device must request certification of ownership of the device from the BCA, an appropriate law enforcement agency, by May 1st, 2027. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and appropriate law enforcement agency must provide the person with a duplicate copy of the request for certification. So now you need paperwork to own your firearm. Okay, and we're not talking about a fully automatic weapon, which would require that, right? Talking about a common gun in a lot of people's household, including people's turkey hunting gun. All right. A person described in paragraph A must, and this is where it gets really insane, safely and securely store the device pursuant to the regulations adopted by the BCA. Now, of course, I'm not advocating for unsafe storage here. We're obviously advocating for safe storage. The problem here is we know what these guys want to do. They want to make home protection irrelevant because they're going to come up with some arbitrary standard. Okay. So that's my issue here. It's not that we don't think firearms should be safely stored. Of course they should. And there is negligence laws on the books right now. If you are liable, if someone's harmed by your firearm in your house because you didn't secure it, right? So we're not against that. It's just the fact that you're going to have some arbitrary standard, and we've seen what that means.
Right, and it can go way too far. I think it was New York that the law was found unconstitutional, but effectively what it did was neutered the protection ability of a firearm by mandating that whenever it's stored, it's fully unloaded, locked, and away from your person or what have you. So it's like, well, then what's the point of it if you have to go to it, unlock it, load it back up with the individual rounds in the magazine, and then begin to protect yourself? It just makes the ownership of a firearm moot. So luckily that law in New York was struck as unconstitutional, but we'll see what kind of concoction they create here.
Right. And by the way, that's a really interesting point. Of course, leave it to the lawyer to bring that up. If they even pass any of these laws, if they're capable of passing these laws, they're going to be immediately challenged in federal court and not likely do well in the Eighth Circuit. Okay, let's go back into this legislation. This is where it's really insane. Number 2, agree to allow the appropriate law enforcement agency to inspect the storage of the device to ensure compliance with this subdivision. So in other words, Governor Tim Walz wants to allow government agents to inspect your home. Gee, didn't he just spend the last 2 months complaining about government agents unconstitutionally entering people's homes that may or may not be here legally? Was that not the complaint he just made? And here he just says, because you own a firearm, a safe firearm, one that you purchased and should have a legal right to own, we are going to allow government agents to enter your home. We could take the same language and just apply it to somebody that is an immigrant, and he would be against it.
Right.
Like, he would be against allowing government agents to come and inspect that you are not overstaying your green card or that you are actually here legally. He would be totally against that. But you, an American citizen, owning a firearm that's protected by the Second Amendment, Tim Walz and all these Democrats want to allow government agents to come into your house. And how's that not a violation of the Fourth Amendment as well?
And how would that even be enforced? Would it be some type of lottery schedule? Do they notify you beforehand, or they just pop in at some convenient time? And what is that going to look like in terms of confrontations? There are going to be people that are be very displeased.
Gunnar, I would almost guarantee that there would be more enforcement and more inspections there than there are of the state welfare programs, right?
Yep.
But they probably won't inspect the Somalis that have these firearms, so we know how that goes. All right, number 3, renew the certification of ownership every 3 years. So in other words, and I just assume that means there is some kind of fee, right? So so essentially certification, it's a license. You have a license to own it, and you need to renew it every 3 years. Number 4, possess the device only on property owned or immediately controlled by the person while engaged in the legal use of the device at a duly licensed firing range or while transporting the item in compliance with applicable laws. So in other words, you can't even use your firearm unless it's in your home or on your property or at a legal, what is it called? Duly licensed firing range. No using it in the woods, no using it in a buddy's house. That is all illegal. By the way, they're just trying to find ways to lock Walker Anderson up again in the future. That was a young gentleman that was being prosecuted for a quote-unquote ghost gun. Ridiculous prosecution. Luckily, that didn't stick. Number 5, report the loss or the theft of the device to the appropriate law enforcement agency within 48 hours of the time of discovery of the loss or the theft was made or should have been made. Okay, and you guys can go through here and read some more of this stuff. Once again, the most important thing here is what they are trying to do, and I think it was Billy22 commented on this, that yes, they are trying to break up the families because, guys like Gunner and me, we won't comply with this stuff. That's ridiculous. No, we have a constitutionally protected right to keep and bear arms, and I will not give my firearms up to a government agency. I will not comply with this stuff. This is completely unconstitutional. But if I violate subdivision 2 or 4, I will be guilty of a felony and maybe sentenced or imprisoned for not more than 5 years or a payment of fine of not more than $25,000 or both. So once again, these Democrats, they want to break up families. They want to take people like us that will not cause any harm to society. In fact, I would argue we're making society safer by having these firearms, and throw us in a jail cell for 5 years.
Right. Well, I mean, political philosophers over time have always advocated that the best citizenry in a republic are armed citizens that are able to protect themselves, that don't need the protection of the state. And then if something does happen, you have a militia on almost every block to go and assist good, educated, altruistic individuals that are down to protect their community. And that's exactly what Jake and I are. Our weapons sit not used until there would be a time. And we do everything we can in our daily lives to make sure that time never comes. So we are those strong defenders of the Republic that all of the political philosophers through the millennia have dreamed of. Here we are, and we're not backing down.
All right, well, that's a great segue. Let me make a quick plug here because I did, by demand, schedule a bunch of classes coming up here. So if you're interested in getting your Minnesota permit to carry, whether you're new or you're renewing, the requirement is every 5 years you need to renew and take the same course. But what I advocate for is for people to learn how to use their firearms and learn the rules and the laws governing it in the state of Minnesota. And so we have this course. If we have 2 options, we just launched this, and this is for a lot of our potential customers who are running busy lifestyles. They're working professionals, and they can't really give up a 4-hour time slot, which really includes probably another hour, including with transportation. And so if you like doing just all in-person training, we got a morning class on Monday, March 9th, and an evening class on March 9th, and that's in the Bald Eagle Sportsman Association, Hugo. But we'd have this new hybrid course, and it's on, we got one coming up this Sunday and one on Wednesday night. You could do this with your boxers on at home. You don't need to go anywhere. It's done live, okay, but it's done virtually, and it's 2.5 hours. And then once you complete that, you have a whole range of options in the next month or two of time slots, 1.5-hour time slots, where you get to do the final training, which is firearm training and qualification on a range. So it's a hybrid course that allows people to do something that will maybe fit their schedule a little bit better. Because my intent is to make sure you get this training and you are a legal citizen, a legally law-abiding citizen who has a Minnesota permit to carry. You can go to eliteguardianmn.com. Just click on Minnesota permit to carry on the very top of that. All right, so let's go back here to Governor Walz's. Let's see here. Where did I go? Right here. Governor Walz's violent prevention package. Right here, he's going after what they call ghost guns. Let's see if I can zoom in. I don't know why I can't zoom in there. It is so small. That's how big this thing is. Okay, so small. I can barely read it. But what he's essentially trying to do is make it illegal for anyone to have a firearm that they put together and assembled themselves that doesn't have an arbitrary serial number. And this one, because we covered it on this show with the Walker Anderson case, is just a victimless crime and more reason for these people to throw people in jail. Like there's no benefit. Obviously you're just trying to hope that at some point, if this gun ends up in a crime, which the vast majority don't end up in a crime, you have a better ability to prosecute the crime. But it also, you could look at it a different way. And the point of the Second Amendment is that you don't have a tyrannical government, and those serial numbers also could be used by government in a way for gun registration. So it's very fascinating they're going after that one, which I just don't know of many cases where this is a big deal in the United States, or certainly in Minnesota.
Right. I mean, I could see if there's large scale manufacture, criminal organizations and gangs, but we're not seeing that. What we're seeing is very technologically sophisticated individuals that know how to run a CNC machine for kicks, building their own stuff, and it's actually fantastic. And it calls into question the whole serial number registration anyway, because the federal government is not supposed to be keeping tabs on individual sales. They're not supposed to be keeping tabs on serial numbers and registrations like this. When you do a NICS check, that information ought to be deleted. I think it's after like 30 days or 90 days, something like this.
Mhm.
So if then feasibly none of the serial numbers tangibly matter, right? Then why would it matter if there wasn't one present on these particular rifles? So I think that calls into question again the whole question of whether or not the federal government wants a gun registry and confiscation. I think it's just another methodology to keep that option in their rails.
It's right on. Okay, I want to cover the preemption law because I think this is very important. Let me pull this up here real quick. Sorry. So this is another thing that Minnesota Democrats want to take away. So right now, in regards to firearms, the legislature preempts all authority of home rule, charter, or statutory city, including a city of the first class, county, town, municipal, corporation, or other governmental subdivision, or any of their instrumentalities to regulate firearms, ammunition, or the respective components to complete the exclusion of any order, ordinance, or regulation by them, except that a government subdivision may regulate the discharge of firearms, and a government subdivision may not or may adopt regulations identical to state law. And by the way, this is very much in reference to like hunting laws, like no discharging a firearm in city limits, if you're trying to take deer, right? So the preemption law is a very important thing. I know you'll want to talk about this, Gunner, but because we have preemption, the city of Minneapolis, the city of St. Paul, all these cities that hate gun ownership, and unfortunately, our city, Stillwater, the mayor is at least on board with this kind of stuff. They can't further erode our right to keep and bear arms because of it. All cities in the state of Minnesota are subdivisions of the state. They exist by, basically the authority of the state government, right? They're it's not like the federal government where the states actually are sovereign. Right, it's a joint union. The cities actually are subservient to the state government, and here they're dictating that they cannot further take away the rights to keep bear arms. And of course, all of us people that are lawful, permit holders, right? We don't just carry in our city limits. So you can imagine how terrible that would be if you went city and you have to keep track of what the laws are in each city. Which
Well, it's
I think
hard
would
enough
be
state to state when you're traveling the country, but yeah, city to city. I mean, imagine if you're going downtown Stillwater and they don't allow guns on this premises. You're like, what?
right.
How can you do that? Or within city limits, you can't possess, store an AR-15. That again is going to be a ridiculous requirement that's just going to be litigated city by city in ad infinitum. I mean, it's going to be ridiculous to try to enforce that. So another crapshoot, I think, on Walz's part.
Well, and it might be the most interesting case study ever. Like, it's almost worth the experiment. Just think what would look like crime to crime by city, the cities that adopt these ridiculous anti-gun legislation. we
Right.
think they're going to operate. It's going to be much easier for them to just go to those places, right?
Right.
It's
Right.
an insane idea.
Right. Right. There's several prisons in Stillwater. And so like that, I mean, luckily there's never really been a breakout, but it's kind of in the back of our mind. And
Yeah.
I was walking one day in the neighborhood, and there was there was someone with a sign out, "We have no weapons in this property." Like, why would you do that? At least put like an ADT security thing up. Don't put, "We don't have any guns, so don't come in here and look for them." That's a ridiculous thing. It's an advertisement. And so the same thing then would occur for citywide and these city ordinances. Well, they don't allow guns in this city. Easy picking, and that would be incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah. Okay, Gunnar, I think I only have you for a couple more minutes. So one other thing a couple other things I want to point out here in this press conference. So let me pull this up here real quick. So they bring up a bunch of different people. This is pretty common play by the leftists when they do these sort of rallies and press conferences.
Gun violence.
So they start out with one of the students' enunciation. Poor girl was shot. Had to get surgery on her skull because that's where the bullet embedded in her. And I just want to leave that alone because obviously this family's gone through tragedy. But once again, doing what the leftists want, taking firearms from people like us, does nothing to stop those tragedies. In fact, it's only better to have people like us in that. And then they bring in communities, they bring people to organizations. But one that I found so fascinating, to make sure I get the right timestamp on, is there. He literally brings someone who admits to being a drug dealer, and then uses his case as a sob story for gun violence. Listen to this.
To leave college, and my life took a turn. I couldn't see a path in front of me to find the income, so I ended up selling marijuana to pay my rent and to put food on the table. Just months later, I was tied up, shot, robbed, and left for dead in a duplex hallway at just 20 years old.
Okay, so we don't really know the whole story behind that, but just the optics of that, like one of your sad stories. Like, listen, the children of Annunciation School are innocent people. We all have to realize children are, for the most part, innocent human beings. But like, you know this as well as I do. The law looks very different on gun rights when you are not an innocent party, and in not innocent parties, someone doing drug deals, right? It teaches in our course all the time is you have to be an innocent party for self-defense laws, right? There's a special difference when you're not. And here he brings as one of his people on the stage a dude that was drug dealing, and you can only imagine it's probably a drug deal that went bad, right?
Right. And I think, if anything, isn't that an argument to legalize drugs? And in fact, didn't we legalize marijuana? So it's another moot point. Unfortunately, that doesn't land as well as Walz probably thought it would.
Well, and also because it's illegal, yes, the drugs are illegal, and somehow he's able to deal drugs. At the time it was illegal. So even illegal guns are still going to be part of this equation, right? There's still going to be illegal guns in these. What does this have to do with anything? That's the big question. Is you're in the business of illegal activity, and you probably got shot by someone who acquired a gun illegally.
Right.
What case are we making? Like Tim Walz, like it's like amateur hour up there. Not only does he shred his whole argument by basically showing that it's not just the guns, because he literally admitted to bringing one in 1970 school, but here he has a drug dealer, and those guns are probably going to still exist in those drug deals gone bad. Great job, buddy. Great job. All right, I'm going to respect your time. I know you only had till.
I do want to say that the GOP proposal, I think I'm totally on board with the proposal to put a resource officer at each school. I think is tax money well spent. In fact, I think we should be looking for veterans to hire for these positions. I think it would do a lot for our veteran community and then also our school safety. And I think if people knew that there was ex-Marine at every school, we'd have a totally different situation here in the United States. That's what I advocate for. And it doesn't have to be all through tax money. It can also be through individual donations from a school. But if there's assistance and a green light from the state, then let's go full throttle towards it.
Yeah, 100%. And that should be every school district making up the choice themselves. But yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to do. And listen, I'm in coaching, youth coaching, and I know that there are some youth coaches that get paid because parents need a better coach or need a coach to do it. And so they'll pay a coach. And it's like, why wouldn't we do that with like someone protecting our children at school if there's not the resources already? So yeah, that's a solution. And I think school districts can make that decision themselves. I would obviously advocate for shifting funds around because I don't think they should be taxed more for that. But that's up to the communities to decide.
One last thing, I remember last time there was a serious threat on this. There was people in mass that showed up at the Capitol. So be prepared to do that again. If Jake calls, if Action for Liberty calls, we need patriots to show up.
That's right on. Exactly. All right. Brad says, make sure you go buy a tie. I don't know why you need a tie, but apparently.
I never wear ties. Never
yeah.
wear ties.
He's a
Unless
very
I'm
well dressed man.
in front of the judge, never wear ties.
He's a very
Thanks,
well.
everyone.
I'll put it that way. But yeah, the request has been made. Thanks, Gunnar.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
See you
I'm
later.
gonna go to the post show here pretty quickly. If you are a premium insider, want access, or if you're not, you can get access to the post show. I got a couple things I want to discuss. Kind of like Republican insider stuff, but I think you guys will enjoy that. We'll stay on top of this issue. There's so much stuff. There was already a committee vote. It didn't pass a committee, so that's good, but that doesn't mean that the Democrats are going to keep coming for the guns. And quite frankly, this is just one of those things where it's like we can't have this thing pass in Minnesota. This is a must defend position. Okay, like the idea that the Democrats are trying to turn guys like me into a felon is it's unconscionable, and I will fight that tooth and nail. And I know you will too. So we'll stay on top of this story as things move on. So we're going to be live on our Premium Insiders show. And otherwise, for those that aren't Premium Insiders, I will be back next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. Thank you for watching.